Hello, it's good to see you. Today we're going to just ramble a little bit. Some people had asked me if I would just do a ramble video where I just talk about whatever. I don't really have much to say about my neighbors. They've been kind of quiet. Hasn't really been much going on. The only thing I can remember is about 1 o'clock this morning, a very loud motorcycle roared up and stopped over here, and I never heard them leave, but they were gone when I got up at 6 a.m. Sorry. They were gone when I got up, so I guess I must have fallen asleep, and they roared off on their loud motorcycle. That's the only thing I know of that's happened around here. One thing I thought I would talk about, I don't know what made me think of this. I wanted to talk about accents. I think I know what it was. A couple of days ago, I found myself standing in line with a bunch of high school students, local high school students. And I will tell you, there were probably 10 of them, and not one of them sounded like they were from here. They all sounded like, if you remember the show Square Pegs from the 80s, they sounded just like those kids, like a bunch of Valley girls. That's what, even the boys, I mean, they all sounded like that. And I thought, you would never know they grew up here, and I'm assuming they did. I was at a place where they got on a bus from a local public school, so they were from here, but none of them sounded like they came from here. And it, I looked back. I have a video that it was originally on VHS, and I had it transferred to DVD of my junior year in high school. The journalism club, there was a journalism class, and then there was a journalism club. I was in the journalism class, but I was not in the club my junior year, so I didn't get to do it. But the kids who were in the journalism club got to go around with video cameras throughout the year. You know, the giant ones, looks like a suitcase, you hold it, you know. So they got to go around throughout the year and just talk to random students in the school, and you could ask them questions. You could just go through and get video of kids in the classroom. As long as you didn't interfere with the class, you could get video of the teachers, you know, talking in class, or just, you could do whatever. There were really no limits, as long as you didn't go in the bathrooms, I guess, but you could do whatever. And I really hate that I missed out on that, because I kind of wanted to do it, but I wasn't in the journalism club, so I didn't get to. But anyway, I watched that video, and it's not very long. We sent off all the tapes that were made to a company, which unfortunately went bankrupt that same year, so we didn't do it my senior year. It was only my junior year. And we sent all the tapes off to this company that would then take all the clips and kind of combine them. They combined everything together to make one compilation video of our year in school. And I watched that, and I'm listening to these kids talk. Now, these kids in the video were about the same age as the kids that I was near. They were in line. About the same age, grew up in not exactly the same area, but close enough. And it was like they came from two completely different planets. I mean, the kids in the video sounded like me, sort of, I guess. They didn't sound anything like kids today. And I noticed that more and more. Just out in public, I'm just listening to people talk, and they don't have, the younger kids, a lot of them have absolutely no accent at all. My kids don't. Neither of my kids has a southern accent. They don't. They grew up here. Now, it was a little different for them, and I don't know if this is what it was. But my last ex and I were married for 3 years, and he has kids, and they're about my kids' age, and they spend a lot of time together, and they don't have a southern accent. And I wonder if being around them for those 3 years, day in and day out, might have been enough to kind of scrub their southern accent out. I don't know what it is. It could be, I think a lot of it is watching YouTube videos. You know, kids watch a lot of YouTube. I know they do. And I hear a lot of these kids, when I hear them talk, they have kind of the same cadence. They use the same sentence structure as a lot of YouTubers do. And I don't know if it could have that big of an impact on the way they talk. I imagine it would, especially if they want to be like these other people and they want to act like them, sound like them. I know when you're young, that's very important. Most people outgrow that. Some people don't. Some people spend their whole lives trying to be somebody else. But I know, especially when you're a teenager, all you want is to fit in. And if what you see as acceptable is somebody who sounds different from you, you're probably going to work, whether you even realize it or not, you're going to kind of change the way you talk. I don't know if that's what's going on, but I think it's kind of a sad thing to think that you could come back to North Carolina in 50 years and everybody sounds the same. I mean, it's kind of homogenous and everybody just talks the same. And I guess to some people that'd be a good thing. To me, it's not. I like to have variety. I mean, I want to know that when I go up into the mountains, you can hear the dialects change. And that's always fascinated me. I love dialects, regional dialects, and how much they change. Like if you go down to South Carolina, I can hear a difference when I go to Myrtle Beach. If you talk to people that, not necessarily right in Myrtle Beach, but people down in that area, don't exactly sound like people up in the Piedmont area of North Carolina. Definitely, if you go to the Outer Banks, there is that Outer Banks accent, that brogue, the Outer Banks, I think they call it the Outer Banks brogue. It's really cool. I love the way they talk. It's really something. There are some videos on YouTube about it, and if you're interested, yeah, it's neat because some of the videos tell you the history of where that accent came from, and it's fascinating. It's just sad to think that my generation may be one of the last ones to have any sort of accent, and even I don't have as much of one as, say, my father. Now, my father has a very, very strong accent. I've been accused of faking my accent. If I have, I've been faking it for 45 years. Now, I know it changes sometimes. Even my younger son has pointed it out before. He rides with me in the car a lot, and he said, "Mom, you sound different when you're mad." Because I get mad sometimes in traffic. He said, "You talk different when you're mad." I said, "I know. That's my hometown. My hometown comes out when I get mad or I'm in traffic and somebody scares me to death, like we almost get in a wreck or something." And yeah, I do sound different. I know when I'm angry, I talk different. I know the accent gets a lot stronger then. Or if I've been back to my hometown, like if I go down there to visit relatives, go to a reunion. We have 2 family reunions every year. We have one from my mother's side and one from my father's side. And I've mentioned before that I managed the one on my father's side. I took over management of that reunion about 4 or 5 years ago. And so I'm down there all day that day. I get down there early in the morning and I stay till around dinner time. I call it dinner. Now, most people around here call it supper time. You have breakfast, the way they say it. You have breakfast, dinner, and supper. Now, that's what my parents called it, but I went to a private school up through the 5th grade, and it was drilled into us. It is not breakfast, dinner, and supper. It is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's how you say it. And to this day, that's how I say it, because going to school, they said that was the way to say it. That's the way we were taught to say it. But I'd be down there till dinner time or supper time, whatever you want to call it. And I notice when I go down there and I have been around my relatives, most of them are older. I really wish the younger generations would get into the reunions, but they kind of don't. So I spend the majority of the day hanging out with my older relatives, which is awesome, which is wonderful, because they're getting to that age now where we're starting to lose them. They're getting on up there in their 70s and 80s, and unfortunately, a lot of them have already passed away, and I don't know, it's kind of sad. So I look forward to it every year, but when I come back, I do sound different. I sound very different. As soon as I cross that county line, it's like you could just feel it, Here it comes, it all comes back. I wish I could find, I had this old home video from when I was 12 that my dad made. He borrowed this video camera from a friend of his. It was one of the one of the gigantic ones. You have to hold it like a boombox. And, it's like this big. And it takes the full-size VHS tapes. And he made a video of me. It was my brother and me, and we were racing go-karts. My dad's cousin had this huge go-kart track behind his house, and he had several go-karts. And I had never been on one before, and I was terrified. I would not go fast on it at all. I was scared to death. And my brother is just lapping me. I mean, he's just, he's flying around the track. He doesn't care. I was 12. He was 16. And my dad, at one point, I'm just creeping around the track. And you can hear my dad there's just constant commentary about how I won't go faster. And it's really bugging him, I finally get around to where he was. And he said something like, Mary, you need to speed up. And I looked at him and I said, I can't go that fast. And that's how I talked. I mean, I sounded like Forrest Gump. It's hilarious. I wish I could find it because the video was so funny. Because later, my brother had the camera and he was running down this hill and I was behind him and he's running and he fell and the camera just goes, you hear him fall. And you can hear me in the background laughing at him. I never even asked him if he was okay. I never did. I never asked him if he was all right because I was a jerk. I was such a jerk. I was not a good little sister. I was so inconsiderate. He was a great big brother. He still is. I don't see him much though. But in that video, now he had an accent as well, and it was as strong as mine. But then see, he joined the military and moved away. And has been away ever since. He has not ever moved back here. And he's lived all over the place. He lived in Washington State for a while. He lived up in New York State. He lived in Illinois. I mean, he's been all over the place. And so he sounds nothing like me. You would never guess that we grew up in the same place. So he's completely lost his accent. And my kids don't have one. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm all alone, And it's just kind of sad, but there's still people out there who have accents. To me, I don't hear it so much until I'm around people who sound different, and then without even realizing it, sometimes subconsciously I will just kind of clean it up a little bit. I will try to enunciate my words a little more, kind of, change I'll have a more lilting cadence or whatever. I try to not quite sound so Southern because I always feel like people are judging me. I always feel like they think I'm stupid because I ran into that when I lived up in Illinois for a year. A lot of people, when they heard me talk, their first reaction was, well, she's an idiot. You better speak slowly because she's not going to understand what you're saying. And, she's still probably freaked out by the electricity and indoor plumbing. So be gentle with her because, I don't know what turnip truck she just fell off of. That was a lot of people's first reaction and first impression of me was that I was stupid, So, but in some situations, my accent got worse up there because after people got to know me, they would say, I love to listen to you talk. Nobody up here sounds like you. So then you just lay it on real thick because they just love it so much and they just love to hear it. So you just do extra because they do enjoy it. And in some ways, it kind of got worse while I was up there. I had a couple people that I worked with. I worked in this one place the whole year I was there, and I had a couple people admit to me, it's like, can I tell you something? No offense, can I tell you something? I kind of thought you were a dingbat when I first met you. I was not, you're not at all like I thought you were gonna be. I mean, like, I had you pegged all wrong. I was afraid I was going to have to hold your hand and help you do your job, and that you weren't very competent. And I don't mean anything by it, you know. It's fine. I've dealt with it every day since I moved here. Even my landlady thought I was dumb. It was awful. So everywhere I went, I don't know. Um, so I've been a little self-conscious of the way I talk. But even before that, the first time I ever realized everybody didn't sound like me was when I was about 9 years old. Now, granted, you're somewhat aware that people on TV don't sound like you, like the people that do the 6 o'clock news don't sound like you, people in movies don't sound like you. You kind of get that on some level, but in a way, all the people I came into contact with every day did sound like me for the most part. It was very rare that I came across somebody who didn't. I mean, unless it was just brief, you know. But when I was 9, the summer I was 9, I think I was 9 or 10, I don't know, somewhere in there. We went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we spent a few days up there with my dad. Had a friend up there. They were in Vietnam together. They were both Seabees in the Navy in Vietnam, and he lived in Pittsburgh, and we went up there for a visit. Now, I had never met him, and I had never heard him talk. I knew of him, but I'd never met him. So, and he was married, and he had kids that were about my age. He had 2 kids that were about my age, and they lived in this really nice little suburban neighborhood. You know, it's like one you would see at the beginning, the first few frames of a sitcom back in the 80s. You know, it's a very typical American middle-class suburb. And there were lots of kids in the neighborhood, and we were up there for 2 or 3 days. And my dad and mom, you know, would sit and visit with his friend and his wife, and they would just shoo the kids outside, like, y'all go play. So I was aware that his kids did not sound like me. They pronounced certain words differently. They had different words for things, different phrases that I had never heard before. And it was really weird. I can't think of any right offhand, but they just didn't talk like me. And it didn't bother me until we went out and played with some of the other kids in the neighborhood. And the other kids in the neighborhood picked on me. They made fun of me, and they laughed at me, and, you know, they called me a hillbilly and a hick, and, you know, just because of the way I talk. And they said I sounded stupid, and it really hurt my feelings, honestly. But even then, I remember thinking, well, y'all don't, you know, y'all sound stupid to me. I mean, I didn't say it because I was raised to not talk that way. You don't say stuff like that to people. It's not nice. But I remember thinking, y'all sound stupid too. We all sound stupid, I guess. But it did bother me. But there wasn't much I could do about it. I mean, I had spent 9 years of my life down in the South, and that's what I heard. You know, I didn't grow up there. But, I mean, they kind of got over it. They picked on me a little bit, but fortunately they didn't keep doing it. And the visit was okay. We had a good time. But I guess that was really the first time I realized that everybody didn't sound like me. But to me, I don't have an accent. You do. Everybody else does. Y'all have an accent because you don't talk normal. You don't sound normal. But what is normal? Who would you say doesn't have an accent? I would say I spent some time down in central Illinois. That's not where I lived, but I did go down there. And I would almost say they didn't have an accent. It was very nondescript. It's like there wasn't anything in particular about it that really stood out. It was, I mean, I'm no disrespect, but it was just very generic. Like they could have been from anywhere. It was like stripped of all flavor or something. It was like boiled hominy or something. It was just nice people, nice folks. I met some wonderful people there. I'm not criticizing, but if I had to pick an area that I would say had no accent, it would probably be central Illinois. They didn't really have it. Now, I've spent some time in Arkansas, one part of Arkansas, outside of Little Rock, and they actually the little area where I was for a few days, they actually sounded a lot like people in central North Carolina. I was surprised. It's a very similar accent. But I do notice if you go up into the mountains in Virginia, and definitely some parts of West Virginia, but not all of West Virginia. Now, I've met people from West Virginia who have kind of like a northern accent to me. But the mountains in Virginia, oh my God, the accents up there are so cool. And they're I'd say they're more twangy. I can't really do it, but it's more twangy than accents here. And they pronounce words differently. My favorite example of that, in 1997, I went up there. My dad had not been living up there long. He moved up there, and he was dating the woman who became my stepmom. And I was up at their house one Sunday morning. I was up at my dad's house, and she was there. And she said, "Now we need to stop and get flares on. We need to stop and get flares to take to church this morning." It must have been a Sunday morning, and I thought, flares. So now I had never been to their church. I'm not really one to do that, but my dad wanted me to come up there and visit and go to church with my future stepmother and him. So I said, okay. And so I got up there bright and early, and I was going to ride with them. And she said, "We need to stop and get the flares for church." And I thought, why do you need flares for church? She said they had to be set up before the church service. And I thought, what kind of church is this? Okay, now I'm starting to freak out a little bit. Now, these were mountain people, and I'm certainly not saying anything against mountain people. The people up there are really cool. They're awesome. Very interesting people live up there. But I was freaking out a little bit because I had not really spent any time up there. I remember I had to go to MapQuest and print out directions back when you go to MapQuest and print directions. I didn't have a GPS or anything. And I had to print directions to get to his house because it's way up in the middle of nowhere. And so I'm thinking, oh my God, I've heard of these snake handler churches, and I thought, okay, I don't think they're snake handling church, but what are they doing with flares in church? Oh my God. And I'm thinking, maybe I better not go. But I figured out when we stopped at a place along the way, she was saying flowers. That's how her family, anyway, that's how they would say the word flowers. She had to stop and get flowers for the arrangement by the pulpit for church that morning. Not, I was expecting road flares. I thought, my God, this could get really interesting. I don't know if that's how they do baptisms, or you going to chase the devil out of there. What are you going to do? It's like an exorcism with I don't know. I was genuinely concerned. I mean, it's funny now. I was really nervous about going to this church. But it was flowers and everything was okay. I just never heard anybody pronounce it flares. Flares. And I had heard other people up there since then say it that way. So it wasn't just her. That's how they say it. It's weird. But I know a lot of people don't like certain accents. And I'll be honest, there are some accents that I like more than others. There are one or two accents that I find to be kind of annoying, and I don't like them, especially if they're kind of nasally. It's not their fault. I mean, it's just that's the sound that comes out when you're talking, and you can't really help that. I guess I guess you can, but why should you? Why should you have to change the way you sound to make somebody else happy? That's stupid. But I love the fact that you can go all over the United States and hear all these beautiful dialects. Even just in one state, even just in North Carolina, there are so many regional dialects here. And I know that there are a lot of people who seem to think that there's one Southern accent. And if you don't sound like, well, I declare, then you don't have a Southern accent. Very few people sound like that. Like the character I did there for a while, what was her name, Scarlett? There are not many people that sound like that in real life. I mean, it's just not. There are hundreds and hundreds of Southern accents, and I think they're beautiful. I think accents are beautiful. And I think it's a shame that at least in some pockets of our youth, we're losing that. And I think it's sad, but I think it's inevitable. I don't really think there's much we can do about it. I mean, accents are kind of organic. You can't really grow it. You can't download it. You just have to be basted in it, especially in your youth, and it just stays with you. Yeah, there's an interesting thing that I have noticed down around Asheboro, North Carolina, and if you live around there, you may have heard it. You may not have noticed it, but I noticed it as a child. A lot of people down there around, now it's not just Asheboro, Randolph County. They pronounce home, Home, they pronounce it as home. Home. I've heard that a lot, and that's cool. No, where I grew up is home, but they say home. It's neat. There's actually I meant to look it up. There is a realtor in Asheboro who has some commercials. I think she actually has some YouTube videos where she says it and you can hear her say it like that, home. But I can't remember her name right now. But if you just listen, you can hear really interesting things about the way people talk. And sometimes it's funny, and I try to reserve judgment, when I hear somebody talk. I try not to assume things about them based on the way they sound, because I know what that feels like. Like, I'll be honest, for me, if I hear a very strong New England accent, especially a New York accent, I hate to say it, but sometimes I just assume that you're rude. I don't mean to, but sometimes it comes across as kind of brusque, and you talk loud, you talk fast, and I have to stop myself and go, you don't know anything about this person. They sound the way they sound because of where they grew up, just like you. And you don't like it when people assume you're stupid, so don't assume they're rude just because they sound like that. You need to just let them talk, listen to them, get to know them before you decide what they are. Most people don't do that. But I like my accent. I wear it like a warm, fuzzy sweater. And I don't have any desire to change it. I figure if people don't like it, I don't have to listen to me if they don't want to. It's voluntary, I guess, unless you work with me, then you're kind of stuck with me. But if you work with me, you probably sound like me anyway, and you don't even notice, because to you I don't have an accent and you don't have one either. So that is my ramble, which went way longer than I expected. And I have another video to get to before I go to bed. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this recorded okay. I'm still messing with my video software. I'm not happy with it at all. Maybe one day it'll get better. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day, and I will see you again soon.